My name is Silvia Solyom and I have a PhD in cancer genetics. You will see my list of publications, patents and awards on my website's About Me section. Today we will look at the risk of cancer in somebody's chart using the toolbox of Uranian Astrology. In order to determine whether somebody has a high risk of cancer during his or her life, I'm using 4 aspects in total. 2 hard aspects and 2 planetary pictures that are based on symmetry or a hard aspect to a symmetry. And 2 of them were defined by the Hamburg School astrologers, Alfred Witte and his colleagues, and 2 of them are based on my observations. The first of them, which is the most prevalent, is the Saturn-Neptune-Hades planetary picture. The second one is the Sun-Hades hard aspect. So these were all defined by Alfred Witte, and I will show you his interpretations. Further, I also found that many people who have a Sun-Pluto hard aspect can have cancer, but of course this can also be other type of acute and serious disease, just like in the previous cases. Finally, I have found a small amount of cases who have a Saturn-Neptune-Pluto planetary picture. So basically here Pluto replaces Hades. And we will have a look at the first three possibilities using the charts of famous people. Our first example is Melanie Griffith. She had recurrent skin cancer on her nose. She has a Saturn-Neptune-Hades planetary picture. When we first look at the wheel, of course, as often is the case, we can't see anything. Here she has Saturn, Hades, and Neptune, and it is not evident what kind of relationship these 3 planets have. So we are generating first a 90-degree dial. And here we can see her Neptune together with her midheaven, Hades and Saturn. This is a rare example when the cancer is still not evident from the 90-degree dial, but those who can see higher harmonics may spot what's going on here. But we are going to generate the 45-degree dial. And now we can see that here she has Saturn, here she has Neptune together with the midheaven, and here she has Hades. In other words, Neptune is in the midpoint of her Hades and Saturn, or in hard aspect to these 2 planets, which is shown the same way on the dial. It is very interesting that her midheaven, in case her time of birth is precise, together with Mercury is also on this axis. So the orbs are very tight here, but you can see it for yourself and measure the distance of Hades from Neptune and from Neptune to Saturn, and you will see that this is indeed a symmetrical aspect. Let's see what Hamburg astrologers had to say about the Saturn-Neptune-Hades planetary picture. And here I must note that actually for my work it doesn't matter which planet is in the midpoint of the other 2 planets or in hard aspect with that. I interpret the 3 possibilities exactly the same way. So here we go. This science is really a master science. Of course, it can mean many things, not just cancer, but here it is, cancer disease, malignant. Cancer is a malignant disease. It can also mean other types of problems such as intestinal complaints, or it says typhoid epidemic. Again, the same interpretation for my work. It can mean a slow decay of the body, in other words, cancer, malignancy. And if you read the interpretations when Saturn is in the midpoint of the other 2 planets, again you get serious sickness and some other type of interpretations. But again, I do not differentiate between the 3 types of possibilities. Our next example is writer Carlos Castaneda. Here we can already see from the wheel that he has a Sun-Hades hard aspect. It is actually a square, so 90-degree aspect. But let's generate the 90-degree dial anyways. And if we do so and point with the pointer on the Sun Hades hard aspect, we can see that they form a planetary picture with his midheaven. So it is actually similar to Melanie Griffith, in case his time of birth is precise, that such a planetary picture is formed. Carlos had liver cancer, and it is known that some type of plant psychedelics may increase the risk of liver cancer. Furthermore, Carlos didn't make a secret about how much meat he ate, and probably this was not to his advantage. And let's see what Hamburg School astrologers had to say about the Sun Hades hard aspect. It says the body's susceptibility to sickness, decay of the body. Well, this decay of the body, one can interpret it as after somebody died or even during when somebody is living. And then if we read further, it can cause various other types of phenomena. So disease, diseased body, debility, deformed or mutilated body, and so on. So even though it is not spelled out outright that this is a cancer-causing hard aspect, I noticed that most of the time, not always, but in the majority of cases, it signals a high risk of cancer in somebody's chart. Our third example is Marie Curie, scientist and Nobel Prize winner, who almost certainly got cancer because of her work with radioactive materials. And she has two signatures of cancer in her chart. One of them is a Sun-Pluto hard aspect, which is in this case an opposition. It is already seen from the wheel. And she also has a Saturn-Neptune Hades planetary picture. In order to see that, we have to generate the dial again, because here if we seek out Saturn, Hades and Neptune, the relationship is not evident. So here we go with the 90-degree dial, and we can see first the Sun-Pluto hard aspect, which actually forms a planetary picture with her Aries point, which is of course at the same place for everybody, and this is the cardinal axis. The very fact that it forms a planetary picture with this means that the world knew about her cancer. So basically I think everybody knows that Marie Curie had cancer, which was I think leukemia associated with aplastic anemia. And now let's look at her Saturn, Neptune, Hades planetary picture, and here I'm going to put the pointer right on Hades, and by following this red line, or you can measure it yourself, you can see that Neptune and Saturn are caught up in this process. So actually it writes Neptune and vertex, but you can see half closed vertices to Saturn in her chart, and this tiny orb is definitely acceptable. If we check Alfred Wittel's interpretation on what a Sun-Pluto hard aspect means, this is the very few cases when I disagree with the interpretations. Most of the time the interpretations are too negative, but this is too positive in my mind. Even though we can read things such as changed function of the glands or circulation of fluids, physical transformation, which can basically go either positively or negatively, it rather says positive things such as to grow and regenerate the body, circulation of the fluids, function of the internal organs, the assimilation of nourishment in the body. So these are all true, but the negative connotation of Pluto is missing. And Pluto at its lowest energies is a hellish planet, just like Hades, since Hades is a trans-Neptunian and basically a higher octave of Pluto. But even when I say higher octave, it's not better than Pluto. The hellish energies of Hades are also extremely strong. So in this case, the negative connotations are missing, and I haven't made statistics yet in how many cases Sun-Pluto may mean cancer, but in a lot of cases. But don't be afraid if you see it in your chart, since it definitely can cause other types of diseases and deformations. It can be even as small as, for instance, deformation of your toes or bones in your feet when you have a Sun-Pluto solar direction, or something minor. But in my opinion, in most cases, a Sun-Pluto hard aspect shows a negative rather than a positive development. Our fourth and last example today is Napoleon. He had stomach cancer, and he has the classical Saturn, Neptune, Hades planetary picture. And already previously, I pointed with the pointer to the midpoint of his Saturn and Hades, and we can see that on the other end of the pointer, within approximately 1 to 2 degrees, is Neptune. So this is a Saturn-Neptune Hades planetary picture. 1 to 2 degrees is totally acceptable, but when I'm looking for conjunctions, I even accept 5 to 10 degrees for a hard aspect, and it can still show a higher risk of getting cancer. But of course, if for instance, Sun Hades hard aspect is within 0.5 degrees, then the risk of cancer is supposed to be much higher than if they were like 10 degrees apart from each other. Anyway, let's stay with the example of Napoleon, and if we generate his 45-degree dial, then we can see that these three planets are now next to each other: Neptune, Hades, and Saturn. And actually this planetary picture continues in Mars. And if you evaluate what a Mars-Saturn hard aspect means, you know that this is a disease-causing hard aspect. So the four planets together are definitely worse. You can see many of his depictions showing that his hand is tagged in his coat, and many people speculate that this is because he had stomach cancer and he tried to ameliorate his pain this way. But don't be fooled. What we see on his famous picture is the classical hidden hand motif. And you can see this hidden hand motif being demonstrated all the time and all over the place by the satanic elite. I hope you enjoyed this small demonstration of the power of Uranian astrology. And there is much yet to research. For instance, it is not clear for me which tissue is affected by malignancy from the chart, or whether somebody can be cured after therapy. So how can we see this from the chart? If you think that you know the answers, or you know more aspects with Uranian astrology that can cause cancer, or any type of astrology system you use, whether this is classical Jyotish, KP astrology, Mayan astrology, please comment in the comment section with a few sentences explaining what type of signatures you are aware that can show a higher risk of cancer in the astrology system that you work with. I'm also looking for an open-minded statistician who is willing to work with me to demonstrate whether there is a statistical significance of cancer cases for individuals who were born with these hard aspects and planetary pictures that I have just shown you. And finally, I would like to let you know that I am collecting cancer cases. So whether you were diagnosed with sporadic cancer, or whether it is a familial cancer and many people in your family have been diagnosed with cancer, you may contact me, and I will keep all your data confidential and will send you these signatures and planetary pictures and explain what I can see here. Furthermore, with more cases, I can do more research. Preferentially, I will not only need your time of birth, meaning the day, month and year, but also the minute of birth. But if you don't have it, I'm still very happy if you contact me. I also need your place of birth and preferentially the time of diagnosis, down to the day or even if the minute, if you have this time point. If you have the entire medical report, then you may let me know more details about that. Lastly, I have to mention the correct diet for everybody on Earth who are humans, especially for those diagnosed with cancer or who have a higher risk of cancer in their chart. The only acceptable diet is the vegan diet. Whenever you can see it otherwise, it's a lie. And you must have noticed that there are two types of publications. One of them advocates meat and milk as well as animal products as healthy, and the other one clearly states otherwise. Well, I have a lot of publications and experience in cancer research, and where you have to start a publication is by looking at the last page. Who financed this study? Because you have to be able to differentiate between lies and truth. In many cases, not in all cases, but in the majority of cases, those studies that claim that any type of animal product is healthy are those that are financed by the meat industry. Even though those studies may be in the minority which claim the truth, which is that even a very, very small amount of meat is a significant carcinogen, which means it significantly elevates your risk of cancer, those studies are right. And your heart must be at the right place to be able to differentiate truth from the lies. The second thing is, if you don't have an empathy, then you are not a whole human being. You must have empathy and show mercy for the animals. This is also a must for those who are on the spiritual path, because eating meat is basically a variation on cannibalism. And I could make a whole video on this. I am basically a very rare being. I'm not only an astrologer and a cancer scientist, but I'm also vegan because I know the truth. My heart is right. I have the scientific data and I have empathy. So whether you are somebody who would like to stay healthy, somebody who would like to follow the correct spiritual path and not those who are the deceivers, or whether you are just somebody who would like to have a better world for us, which is not based on tremendous enslavement and torture of animals, then you must follow the vegan diet.